It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, live from Jerusalem as Israel orders a complete siege of Gaza, cutting off power and water supply. Israel's Prime Minister sends hundreds of thousands of troops to the new front line in retaliation to attacks by Hamas. Hamas tonight defends its actions to Sky News.
This is a pure Palestinian resistance responding to a continuous aggression against Palestinians in Gaza, West Bank and Jerusalem.
It's thought that 600 Palestinians and at least 900 Israelis have been killed since this conflict began here. Tonight we hear from the people who escaped the bloodshed.
The terrorists just come with the gun and shoot everybody in those cars.
And in the UK, solidarity for Israel as religious leaders try to calm tensions between the Jewish and Palestinian community.
Also ahead on Sky News at 10, an iron grip on public finances. Labour lays out its plan for the economy. We get the reaction of voters. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview after 10:30.
Good evening. Israel is now at war with Hamas, the Palestinian militant group which attacked this country with such force that now nearly 1,000 people have been killed. More than 100 hostages have been taken by Hamas fighters, and it's thought that at least 10 British citizens are feared dead or missing. Israel's response has been to attack Gaza from the air and soon probably from the ground, as well as cutting off power and electricity supply. In this special edition of Sky News at 10 tonight, we'll examine why and how Hamas carried out the attack. Later in the programme, we'll report from the southern front line of Re'im and Jerusalem and from Gaza, but we begin in the city of Ashdod, to the south of Tel Aviv, where our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn reports.
Midday in one of Israel's biggest cities. 4 cars ignited by a Hamas rocket. Fiery inferno sending up thick black smoke. A 50-year-old Israeli woman died in the attack. Hai Havi came out onto his balcony to witness these scenes he photographed. His neighbourhood up in flames.
What did you think?
They came here. That's what I thought. Because, you know, I've been hearing the stories from everything that's happening more on the border, and it was horrifying.
Israel has been menaced all day by rockets from Jerusalem to Ashdod to Tel Aviv.
It doesn't matter how effective Israel's anti-missile defence systems are, these rockets are still getting through in their scores. And what's terrifying for the Israelis is the random, sporadic nature of these attacks. They have no idea where or when they're going to fall next, which is why, from what we're seeing, these communities are emptying out people, if they can, fleeing to different parts of Israel.
Hamas is defending these attacks. Its spokesman telling Sky News that they are a response to Israel's hostility to Palestinians.
We didn't kill any civilians. We didn't kill any civilians. This is a pure Palestinian resistance responding to a continuous aggression against Palestinians in Gaza, West Bank and Jerusalem. But at the same time, we are welcoming any support to our resistance from Egypt, from Qatar, from Syria, from Iran, from UK if they want.
The Israeli military is retaliating. It's released these pictures of Gaza being pummeled by its airstrikes and artillery from the air. Ordnance raining down on one of the world's most densely populated places. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said tonight there are still Hamas gunmen in the country, and the action in Gaza had only just started.
The images of the destruction in the Hamas strongholds in Gaza are only the start. We have eliminated hundreds of terrorists, and we will not stop there. I said that every place from which the Hamas operates will turn to rubble. It is already happening today, and it will continue to happen with greater force.
And these are the scenes on the ground. Panic at the sound of incoming attacks. This is the aftermath of one airstrike, children being carried out through smouldering rubble. Mohammed was in a building next door to a mosque, flattened by the Israelis. It says the attack came without warning.
We were just sitting down at home and they struck us so quickly all at once. They didn't warn us.
Israel says it may not warn ahead of all of its strikes as it's tried to in the past. The military's language is sounding as uncompromising as its tactics. There's tension in the north too. Israel is sending reinforcements, troops and armour because of the threat from Hezbollah in Lebanon. The danger for Israel once it's committed in Gaza is a second front opening on its northern border in what would become a widening regional conflict. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Ashdod, southern Israel.
Well, it's reported that more than 260 bodies have been recovered from the site of the Nova Festival, a one-day event which was being held in southern Israel. Sky's chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey has been to the site of the festival, and a warning here, his report contains some images of those killed at the music festival.
A line of tanks have taken up a position in front of the trees and farmlands where an outdoor party was attacked by Hamas fighters. It's the most deadly act of terror in Israel's history. The road towards the party's location is now a heavily militarized area. A short distance away in Gaza, smoke rises after the latest helicopter gunship attack. The helicopters circle the area continuously. Trucks and cars used by the terror group remain where they were stopped by the Israeli Defense Forces. The bodies of Hamas fighters who stormed the festival lay where they were killed, on the side of the road or in fields as they attempted to continue the fight. Well, the party took place in fields and beyond this wood line. It's only, well, it's less than a kilometre away from here. The partygoers were attacked as they were trying to get out onto this road. And this is where some of them died, but these are also the Hamas fighters themselves. The bodies are still here. But it's an incredibly dangerous area. We're just talking to soldiers. They said there were rockets here only 20 minutes or so ago. This is effectively the front line. Gaza is really, really near. It's over there. But such is the state of this, if you like, well, actual war remains incredibly tense everywhere you go. Hai and Noam survived the massacre. They've lost friends, killed or abducted. They're now glued to the television for news.
The second photo, when we got the first strike.
Incredibly, as the initial rocket smashed into the party, they took selfies and sent them to their friends. They thought it would pass, so they hunkered down. Then they ran for their car.
And when the shooting starts, directly I push the gas and I go to the field that was on the right to me. I press the 4x4 button and I start driving. And Noam and I was hearing the shootings in our heads, and they hit the car, and we saw the jeeps and the motorcycles of Hamas pushing young children. They was under effect of drugs and alcohol. No heroic situation. They just butchered them.
This dashcam footage shows the Hamas gunmen going from car to car, abducting some and killing others. Hai and Noam escaped across fields in his Jeep.
I realized that in the other road, the left road that was traffic, in the exit, the terrorists just come with the gun and shoot everybody in those cars. And I remember that I want to go in this road because I thought it's the way out.
As the killing intensified, the partygoers began to flee across the fields by foot.
Nobody realized that it's going to be this huge situation. Nobody realized that there is going to come terrorists and kill a lot of people, like innocent people that they just want to be with their friend, be happy, go to the party.
The military build-up along the borderline with Gaza continues. There is no doubt here that the war is just starting and will be long and bloody. Every day, as more details of the many attacks emerge, Israel is left reeling and shocked. This country wants revenge. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Southern Israel.
Well, it was a relatively sophisticated and carefully planned attack. That much is clear. Our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, has been assessing how Hamas pulled off the attack and why.
The unprecedented assault by Hamas struck at multiple points along Israel's border. They used land, sea and air in a level of sophistication that takes time to grow. Evidence has emerged of training in Gaza, but incredibly, without Israel noticing. Their tactics evolved too, perhaps learning lessons from the war in Ukraine. Even the number of rockets fired by Hamas were on a different scale, despite an Israeli blockade around Gaza that's meant to stop weapons and parts from entering. Instead, more than 3,500 rockets were launched in the first 24 hours of this war. That compares with a total of 4,300 fired by Hamas in an 11-day conflict with Israel 2 years ago, and a total of some 4,500 rockets and mortars in a 50-day war in 2014.
In the morning of Saturday, Israel was surprised twice. Once from the doctrine of Hamas, which was very different from the way we in Israel thought about the strategy or the intentions of Hamas, and second, from the capabilities of this organization.
But after decades of conflict, why go so big when Hamas knows the response from Israel will be ferocious? It's doubtless a product of festering tensions over lands, religion and rights. And it's further evidence of Hamas's extremist ideology and brutality. That alone is enough for the trigger. But questions are also being asked about whether the Palestinian group received direct support from a state backer like Iran. It's no secret that Iran, a sworn enemy of Israel, has long provided financial and military aid to Hamas, along with other militant groups in the region, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran has also watched with concern as Israel took steps to normalise ties with a number of Gulf states, even showcasing a prospective peace plan with Saudi Arabia at the United Nations. So far, there is no smoking gun, but if any evidence of direct Iranian involvement in the Hamas operation emerges, it would create an even more dangerous dimension to this already deadly crisis. It could even mean the weekend's attacks are just the opening salvo in a wider operation against Israel that could be joined by militants in the West Bank and Lebanon. One thing's certain, Israel sees this moment as its 9/11 and plans to hunt and destroy Hamas, just as the United States went after al-Qaeda back in 2001.
Deborah Haynes there. Let's go straight to Washington then, and our US correspondent Mark Stone. And Mark, just how worried are the Americans about the possibility or the prospect of escalation?
Extremely worried. I've just been talking to the White House spokesman for the National Security Council, John Kirby, who describes all this, the weekend's events, as a catastrophe for the Israeli people and an extremely dangerous moment for the region. President Biden has not been seen today, and I've been wondering why through the day, and I wonder if that is entirely intentional. This is a day to absorb the enormity of what we have seen over the course of the weekend, a day to reflect on how it might reshape the Middle East, and a day to quietly speak to allies and to just work out what might happen next and how the Americans can mould what might happen next. It's clear that they believe the risk of escalation, either with Hezbollah, Lebanon in the north, or perhaps with President Assad and Syria to the east, or further east still, Iran itself. That risk is absolutely there. That is why there is now an aircraft carrier, US aircraft carrier, with the ships that surround it in the region, in the eastern Mediterranean, preparing for what might come, a show of force for what might come. As for Iranian involvement directly, well, at the moment, the Americans are saying, and John Kirby said to me, they have no evidence of direct Iranian involvement. But clearly, he said more broadly, absolutely, that arc of influence of Iran runs through Lebanon and Hezbollah, runs down through Gaza. They seek to destabilize, and they will continue to do that. But, you know, right now, the Israelis, while they do blame Iran always, because Iran would like to see Israel wiped from the map, they don't need to find that smoking gun just yet, nor do the Americans, because the fight in Gaza, the bloodshed in Gaza, will be absolutely huge. And on that, clearly, there is anxiety here in the White House as well, because they know what wars in Gaza look like. They know what the toll is on the civilians of Gaza.
Mark, thank you. Mark Stone there at the White House. Well, more than 100 hostages have been taken by Hamas, and one of the videos that will no doubt stick in people's minds is that of a grandmother taken by Hamas gunmen. Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has been speaking to her family and reports now from here in Jerusalem.
Video of 85-year-old Yafa Adar being paraded through Gaza on a golf buggy surrounded by heavily armed fighters on Saturday went around the world. For her family, it was confirmation of what they feared. She had been kidnapped by Hamas.
That video of her in a golf cart went around the world. It was seen all over the world. It was shocking to those of us who don't know your grandmother, have never met your grandmother, to see an elderly lady in a golf cart. How did it make you feel?
I don't know if there's any word that can describe. We were shocked. It hurts in every inch of our bodies. We're very scared for her. She's ill, and of course she doesn't have her medicine with her. And we don't even know how long can she survive without her medicine. And what we do know is that without her medicine, she's in a lot of pain. So hopefully she's alive, but she's suffering every minute. And we're shocked. We're hurt. We're scared for her.
Advar's husband has been called up to join the Israeli military, and a cousin of hers is missing after he went to defend his kibbutz.
She's 85 years old, an amazing woman, an amazing grandmother. She's a very positive, very funny woman. She likes to enjoy her life. She likes to help us enjoy our life, to cuddle us, to take care of us. And, you know, in the video, you see her very, very strong.
It's not clear how many people have been taken hostage, but it's thought to be at least 100. Nathaniel Young, a British man serving in the Israeli military, was killed on Saturday. He was buried in Jerusalem today.
Everyone just go down to the floor.
His funeral was interrupted by sirens, triggered by rockets incoming from Gaza. Danny Darlington and Bernard Cowan have also been confirmed to have died. Jack Marlowe is still missing. It's understood that Qatar, which has direct channels to Hamas, is trying to persuade them to release the elderly, women and children being held.
What would your message to Hamas be?
That's not human, whatever they've done. It's innocent people living their lives, and they need to come back home, The situation might be hard, but there's no reason in the world that elderly and women and kids and babies get kidnapped. There's no reason, and bring them back home. Whatever you do, just bring them back home.
Alistair Bung, Sky News in Jerusalem.
Well, tonight, Rishi Sunak has attended a prayer service for Israel in London, saying he wanted to stand with the Jewish people as they mourn. There are now concerns about tensions between the Palestinian and the Jewish community in the UK. The Home Secretary has warned there is no place on British streets for demonstrations that glorify terrorism, as Free Palestine demonstrations have broken out in London tonight. The social media post in the last half an hour said, "I am writing to police chiefs, urging them to use all their powers to prevent disorder and distress." These are live pictures of the pro-Palestine, Free Palestine demonstration taking place in London. Sky's communities correspondent Becky Johnson has this report.
Fresh graffiti in the Jewish heart of North London, and a sense of old wounds now reopened. A suspected burglary at a kosher restaurant left an uneasy community concerned that this was motivated by anti-Semitism. As police stepped up their patrols, for many in this part of the city, the attack on Israel is personal, and there's fear that ordinary people will be targeted in their workplaces or at Jewish schools.
My daughter is concerned. She's got a 9 and a 5-year-old, and the 9-year-old is very concerned. I heard this morning that a lady was taking her child to school, and as she was dropping the child off to school, a car went past shouting, "Allah Akbar." Why are they frightening little kids going to school?
Michael has family in Israel. He's had bad news about 2 of his relatives.
One of them, they found his body. The other one, we don't know what happened to him. He's disappeared. We don't know, we have no idea what happened to him.
Religious leaders say across Europe, Jewish communities feel threatened.
A friend of mine in Barcelona contacted me saying, "Rabbi, don't go out in the streets of London, be careful." And I think there is a sense we have to be careful, we have to be vigilant.
But at a large pro-Palestine demonstration outside the Israeli embassy, people wanted their voices to be heard.
That's why I came here, I raised my voice, stop the war, stop the war. We want peace, we want to live together, we don't want to kill each other. That's enough, enough, enough.
There are accusations of rise of anti-Semitism, and if there is anti-Semitism, it must be stopped, and those people who are committing the crimes must be arrested. However, this is not about anti-Semitism. Standing up for the issue of Palestine is asking for justice, respect for international law, and an end to occupation.
In Liverpool, outside the Labour Party conference, there was an angry exchange.
Stop the murdering of innocent Israelis and Jews! Stop it! Why? Stupid woman!
At a synagogue in Finchley, the Prime Minister spoke at a service for Israeli victims.
When the Jewish people are under attack in their homeland, Jewish people everywhere can feel less safe. We've already seen vile words on our streets and attempts to stir up community tensions. I say, not here. Not in Britain. Not in our country. Not in this century.
As Parliament was lit up in the colours of the Israeli flag, in communities around the country, there's pain, tension and the fear of what will happen next. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Central London.
And we'll just take you back to these pictures of the Free Palestine protest that is taking place tonight in London. And worth repeating that the Home Secretary is effectively asking the police to prevent disorder at these demonstrations so that Free Palestine protest goes on. And by the way, at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, Kay Burley will be speaking to the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly. That's live on Sky News Breakfast just after 7 o'clock. So let's speak now to our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, who is in southern Israel. So, Dominic, where do you think we are tonight in this exceptionally dangerous crisis?
I think we're at a dangerous point, Mark. I think we're on the verge of what could be a conflict of a different order to what we've seen in the past. We've had robust bellicose rhetoric from both sides. We've heard from Hamas saying they will keep up their fight inside Israel. They'll take it to Jerusalem and into the West Bank. And we've heard from the Israeli Prime Minister tonight saying that what Israel's about to do in Gaza will echo through the generations in the Middle East. But I think it's what his officials in the Defence Ministry have been saying that's actually more interesting and potentially more ominous. It suggests that the rules of the game, the very brutal, rough game that is played in this very tough neighbourhood, those rules could be changing. The Israelis traditionally, when they have carried out attacks, a retaliatory action in Gaza, have carried out what's called a door knock policy. They give warnings to buildings sometime before they're about to strike them so that people can get out before they flatten them, as we've seen in the last few days as they've been doing there ahead of those airstrikes. They have been warning people, but what they've said today is that they will not be able to do that consistently and as well as they have in the past, because they have to take more retaliatory action than they ever have in the past. And in response to that, Hamas has said that for every building that is destroyed, every civilian building that's destroyed without warning, they will kill a civilian hostage that they have taken. They have at least 100 hostages, the Israelis believe, in Gaza, and they are threatening to now execute them if the Israelis do not carry out that door knock policy, warning ahead of airstrikes. So I think that shows there is a shift in the rules here, and I think it shows, A, the dangers that the Israelis face as they go into Gaza, but also a sense of how this could be changing the conflict, not just in Gaza, but possibly beyond. Because I think the risk for Israel is that this does widen, and as they go into Gaza, many Israelis fear, when they're more committed on the ground in Gaza, that could be the moment other enemies, particularly Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, but possibly Hamas cells in the West Bank and other supporters in the West Bank could seize the moment to attack Israel as well, opening up other fronts. So it is a very dangerous moment, as Israelis say they are committed to taking the kind of action they need to take revenge for what's happened, but also to make sure they neutralise the threat.
OK, Dominic, thank you very much indeed. So there we are. Slowly, I think we are getting a clearer idea of how Israel intends to respond to an attack they simply didn't foresee, a total blockade of Gaza and almost certainly further military action they are unlikely to signal in advance. What is uncertain is whether this is a crisis that can be contained to these two combatants. Either way, Anna, there are dark and dangerous days ahead.
Mark, thank you. And coming up a little bit later than usual, we will be discussing the events in Israel and Gaza, as well as the international reaction in the press preview. That's with the political commentator Benedict Spence and the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman. Now, the Labour Party were in Liverpool today. The Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves addressed their conference, keen to portray herself as the woman who would have an iron grip on the public finances. She promised to fight the next election on the economy and crack down on waste and inefficiency. Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, reports.
A Shadow Chancellor coming out of the shadows. 3 elections ago, David Cameron warned of chaos under Ed Miliband. Today, Rachel Reeves turned the tables.
If you, like me, believe that it is time to put security first and reject the risk of 5 more years of chaos and decline, you can never trust the Tories with our economy ever again.
Her plan, more investment and, she says, an iron grip on the public finances.
You cannot tax and spend your way to economic growth. The lifeblood of a growing economy is business investment. It is investment that allows businesses to expand, create jobs and compete with international rivals, with new plants, factories and research labs coming to Britain, not France or Germany or America.
The messaging could hardly be any clearer. The Conservatives want to cancel big infrastructure projects. Labour wants to build. The Conservatives want to row back on net zero. Labour wants a green industrial revolution. The Conservatives are tired. Labour is energised.
And following the speech, a surprise endorsement.
It's beyond time to put her ideas and energy into action.
The former Bank of England governor isn't the only leading economic figure taking Labour seriously.
Today we heard the Shadow Chancellor talk about business investment being front and centre of their vision for the UK economy, and I think that was very encouraging for many businesses in the room to hear.
There's about twice as many business engagements this year as there was in the last conference. I mean, it's substantially bigger.
The slogan from Labour is "Get Britain Building Again." On the other side of town, they're doing precisely that, but it's tough. This project was approved when interest rates were rock bottom. Now they're painfully high.
There's been lots of instability over that time, and we need to get back to being able to plan where rents are going long term, what capital subsidy is available over the long term, but also capacity in the system to deliver things. Planning, which Rachel Reeves mentioned this morning, we need enough resource to make the likes of the scheme behind me here.
The funny thing about the noises from Labour today is that we've actually heard something like this before from Boris Johnson's Conservatives. Building, investing, net zero. Even as the Conservatives retreated from this territory, Labour has moved back in. Ed Conway, Sky News in Liverpool.
Well, our political editor Beth Rigby joins us live from the conference in Liverpool. So, Beth, an iron grip on the economy and a new era of devolution. Sir Keir Starmer's speech to conference still to come.
Yes, that's right, Anna. And if we just reflect briefly on what Rachel Reeves was doing there, that speech wasn't filled with the normal crowd pleasers for a Labour Party conference, no big tax commitments or spending commitments, but she did command the room with a confidence showing that the party had changed in the way it was received, and also saying she wanted to fight a general election on the economy. The Conservatives seizing on what's happened with Liz Truss and the chaos and the damage to the Tory brand when it comes to the economy, and they're trying to capitalise on that. So you're going to hear more of that from Sir Keir Starmer tomorrow. He's going to build on it. He's going to talk about a decade of renewal. He's going to reiterate the fight on the economy and taking it onto that territory. He's going to talk about how the party has changed, a changed Labour Party, he'll say, no longer in the thrall to gesture politics, no longer a party of protest. Those days are done. We will never go back. But I think there's a third thing that we need to see from him tomorrow, and I think he knows it too, that he has to try to connect with voters, that he has to give it some emotion, that he has to rouse the crowd in a way, actually, that Rachel Reeves did today. Look, this week has been framed as the question of, if not the Tories, why Labour? And Sir Keir Starmer tomorrow will take to that stage, and his task is to answer that question in a way that voters that do want change will be finally convinced that it's Keir Starmer that will bring the change that they want.
Beth, live there in Liverpool, thank you. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the political commentator Benedict Spence and the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman. Among the stories we will be discussing, this on the front of the Metro, their headline, Hell on Earth. Back with that and more after this. Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the headlines with the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman and the political commentator Benedict Spence with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome to both of you. So let's take a look then at the front pages. After a third day of violence, the Metro pictures a little girl standing among the rubble in Gaza City. Their headline, Hell on Earth. Well, the Financial Times has a picture of the destruction in Gaza too, with the headline, Israel enforces complete siege of Gaza. Likewise, The Guardian also leading with the siege of Gaza and Hamas threatening hostages. The Eye pictures Israeli soldiers preparing for a possible ground invasion, also mentioning Hamas threatening to execute hostages if further attacks on Palestinian homes are made. The Daily Mail leads with the pro-Palestine protest in front of the Israeli embassy in London. Well, the Express describes what has happened, or transpired rather, in the Israel-Hamas war as a bloodbath, stating Israel vows revenge. Well, don't forget, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of those papers while you listen to our guests. So let's head to Jenny Kleeman and Benedict Spence. You know, an extraordinary few days of news, more bodies being discovered, it seems, in terms of Israel. But many of the newspapers now starting to focus on Gaza, the repercussions and the threats from Hamas to execute the hostages that they've taken.
Yeah, I mean, this is very much tragedy upon tragedy, the kind of cycle of violence going into the third day after this horrific terrorist attack. Israeli officials saying it's their 9/11. The question being now, is their response going to be like the war on terror, where you have, a quick and horrific response to masked to kind of be an echo of the terror of what they saw at the weekend. And it is just so horrific on all sides because you have ordinary civilians being used as pawns in this. This is a war with no limits. On one side in Israel, you have babies, small children being taken hostage. You have grandmothers being murdered and the murder being live streamed on Facebook to their families. I mean, just the most appalling atrocities. And then you have Israel saying that this is going to change the state of affairs in the Middle East. This siege on Gaza, where there is water cut off, there is food cut off, there is no internet, there is no electricity. It is impossible to imagine how this densely populated area is going to survive. And it is just incredibly tragic on all sides, especially as more details emerge today.
Yes, so two things, the cutting off of water and electricity. The second, this threat to execute the hostages that they're now holding from Hamas. Our Foreign Affairs editor suggesting that in the past Israel's had a door knock policy where they say to a specific building, it's you, civilians get out. And that's what Hamas still wants to have, the warning that might be there.
Yeah, it appears to still be happening, actually. The Israelis have said to civilians in Gaza, these are the areas to avoid. They haven't said necessarily what the buildings are going to be, obviously, but they have said, actually, these are the areas that we're going to target, these are the ones that aren't. It's sort of very grimly fascinating to see what comes next, but also what the calculation here was, because one almost wonders if Hamas has slightly miscalculated this with the broadcasting of the atrocities, because I think a lot of goodwill towards the Palestinian cause has just been torched. I think the prospect of an independent Palestinian state is off the table for a generation. Especially in the aftermath, actually, of Azerbaijan getting away with the ethnic cleansing of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh a little more than a month ago, and nobody really said anything. Is anybody really going to stop Israel from doing whatever it wants in this situation? Probably not, because what they will say, what the public will say, what they are saying, is the whole point about this Jewish state, about Israel, is about security. Fundamentally, that's what it's about. If we cannot provide our own security on our terms, actually, what's the point of the Jewish state? So I think you will see that it will not be a sort of a wanton bloodbath. It will not be a sort of a genocide. It will not be something where the people are pushed into the sea. It will be predominantly about destroying Hamas. But make no mistake, they're not going to stop until that has been achieved. And if there are collateral victims as part of that, the Israeli public probably are not going to be too upset, having seen firsthand what has happened. And you're also seeing this in the West. Actually, far fewer commentators, people who are very pro-Palestine, are able to hide behind the image of Hamas's freedom fighters now. You're seeing the narrative change. It's no longer, this is, these are rumours that the Israelis put out. It's, oh, well, this is what decolonisation looks like. What did you think was going to happen? And a lot of publics in the West as well are sitting there thinking, absolutely not. We will not put up with that.
Well, in fact, there's been a statement just over half an hour ago, in fact, the Quint, as they call it, President Macron of France, Chancellor Scholz of Germany, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, Prime Minister Sunak of the UK, President Biden of the US. We express our steadfast and united support to the State of Israel and our unequivocal condemnation of Hamas and its appalling acts of terrorism. Our countries will support Israel in its efforts to defend itself and its people against such atrocities. I mean, there's a very strong statements now, aren't they, from Western nations in support?
Yes, we also had Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary-General, coming out today and saying, how distressed he was by what had happened, but also by the siege of Gaza as well, and reminding Israel of its, commitment to uphold international law when it comes to civilians and the treatment of civilians. I mean, you have to think how the ramifications of this and how far this will go. On one level, we already have an enormous tragedy. It looks set to continue. But then you have to think, how was Hamas funded? How was Hamas prepared? How far does all of that go? Iran has said that they have not had nothing to do with this attack. But you do have to wonder how these terrorists can learn how to paraglide and have all of this, incredibly coordinated, under-the-radar attack. And so, this is just the beginning of something which is going to be very far-reaching.
Well, in fact, actually, the White House's National Security Council Coordinator John Kirby saying tonight Iran is complicit, but there is no direct evidence tying it to the attacks. You'll be sure they'll be looking for it.
Oh, Iran is very good at this. It's one of the best in the world at causing proxy conflicts, be it in Lebanon, be it in Yemen, be it in North Africa, frankly. But again, another area where you'll beginning to see maybe has Hamas miscalculated is the condemnation from the Arab states. Now, usually they all come out and they're very pro-Palestine. And in this case, actually, they were also quite pro-Palestine. But you began to see cracks in the messaging. Morocco directly criticising and condemning Hamas. The UAE, again, condemning Hamas for what it's done. This is, one of the lines of reasoning behind this has been that this is Hamas and, by extension, Iran trying to drive a wedge between Israel and the West and the Arab states, Saudi Arabia in particular. Of course, those normalisation talks potentially off the table for now. But there is a lot, the patience that a lot of these countries have had for the Palestinians, specifically Hamas, has been wearing thin for a long time. And I think a lot of them will look at this and see the eggs that they've put into the basket of throwing in their lot with Israel and the West and say, actually, no, this is not the time to blow that up.
Well, let's take a look at more papers, shall we? The Daily Mail again, Hamas will kill a hostage for each Israeli attack. Up the top there, London last night, a protest that's still ongoing, pro-Palestinian. And certainly we saw Rishi Sunak at a service today with the chief rabbi, suggesting his full support for Jewish people who feel threatened. I will stop at nothing to keep you safe. We've already seen vile words on our streets, he said, and attempts to stir up community tensions. I say not here, not in Britain, not this century. But these live pictures, as you can see, still on the streets, it looks like, or latest pictures rather, still on the streets, it looks like it's Whitehall now. They've moved on from the Israeli embassy in the Kensington area of London. And Joe Biden's also coming out, started to talk about needing to support Jewish communities as well. These are the live scenes now, still police on the streets, Jenny.
I mean, it is terrifying for a lot of Jewish people in this country. I saw some tragic statements from Jewish Free School, the headmaster saying there's going to be no detention because they want children to be able to go home in the school bus. They don't have to wear the uniform with the blazer on it. It is terrible that in this day and age that anybody in this country can live in fear of attack. A lot of Jewish people do feel very targeted, and particularly seeing some of the response online when this attack initially happened.
But this is such a fraught issue for so many decades.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But this is an unprecedented terrorist attack. This is the biggest attack Israel has faced. And when you look at it, it is equivalent, as they say, to 9/11. To the Bataclan attacks, what happened in the music festival very much.
Mumbai, this multiple waves and multiple days.
Different order of magnitude of horror than anything that has gone before. And the idea that this is going to be, used in the same game of political football in talking about the Middle East.
You're saying no?
No, this is something else.
I mean, it's interesting that this is the largest single instance of Jewish people being killed since the Holocaust. And I find it very curious and not a little bit worrying. This country, the UK's modern perception of itself is actually framed almost entirely through the Second World War and the Holocaust. That's where all of the sort of the lines of the rhetoric about tolerance and diversity, Britain being a multicultural society, is set against the idea of what Europe was to prevent that sort of thing from happening. We see almost everything through the prism of the Second World War and that message and that lesson. How can it be then, when we are so obsessed with this period of history, that in such large numbers, actually, Jewish people can still feel and visibly are being intimidated on the street? You know, last year there were men driving through North London shouting about attacking and raping Jewish people.
Yes.
As far as I'm aware, none of those people were even charged.
The problem is, though, that if you have a blockade of Gaza where you pull basic, you know, amenities for people that allows them to live, that's exactly what they're complaining about.
Yes,
but Jewish people aren't doing that.
There is a point, yes, that has to be raised. As somebody who is Jewish, you know, being Jewish does not mean that you are pro-Israel. It is kind of racist to make that assumption that because of your ethnic background, you're going to have some political national alliance, which is what makes this particularly sad, that this has become a kind of ethnic thing, when in fact what you're talking about is a political thing to do with borders and land and incursions into it.
Yeah, this is an entire family murdered on their kibbutz. A picture that was released actually by the Israeli authorities. You know, another family. But you know, there's so much coverage and so much to read. We're running over. We had so much in News at 10. On any other night, of course, the newspapers might well have been dominated by coverage of the Labour Party conference. We will turn our attention to what was said there and look ahead to Tuesday as well when we come back.
We were planning this run for over a year, and then that was really essential and strategic for us more than a commercial reason, because we are actually coming to London West End in a month, and we needed to actually finish our attack rehearsals, special lighting and sound. So in Mongolia, we don't have actual stage similar size theatre in Mongolia. Therefore, we went to Inner Mongolia to prepare in the similar stage theatre, but unfortunately it was banned, so we couldn't really finish our tech rehearsals.
So how did they stop the production? Did they pulled the power, did they? Was that what you were saying?
Yes, the official reason was the electric cut, right? Yeah,
they said it's a power cut or something. Yeah, OK. And tell us a little bit about what the show is about. Why might the Chinese authorities feel that it's controversial?
So the play itself is set on 3,000 years ago, 3000 BC, and then it is happening around the Hunnu Empire, and then also like the ancestral empires called Skip and Pezeriks as well. And it is a fictional, it is not like truly based on historical events. So basically we were invited by Inner Mongolians, and then because especially Inner Mongolia is a home country of some majority of part of the Hunnu Empire, and then therefore many thousands of people actually came from different parts from Inner Mongolia to watch the show. Unfortunately, it was cut the electric power, and then also this like water drainage, like just a couple of hours before the show, which made it impossible for the audience to watch the show. And then also like without consulting with us, it was completely banned, announced as a ban. So the director actually wanted to say, using this opportunity, we would like to make one performance in London West End as free to Inner Mongolians who would like to come, who couldn't watch it. In recent years, like China was trying to control Mongolian language, especially in Inner Mongolia. So this year, they banned Mongolian language to be taught in schools, and then also like writing books as well. And then I think this play itself, it maybe, in my opinion, it could have a big influence to strike patriotism for those who were longing to be connected to Mongolia, because in Inner Mongolia, lots of people still consider themselves as Mongolians.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview, joined once again by Jenny Kleeman and Benedict Spence. Welcome back to both of you. Has to be said, Labour's conference has been overshadowed, not surprisingly, by events in Israel and Gaza. But here we are, power to the people. Labour's grid bid is the headline for the Metro. Labour's pledged to rewire Britain. As Rachel Reeves said, its energy policy would create 220,000 jobs and slash bills, pushing for growth and iron discipline. But many of the papers also looking ahead to Sir Keir Starmer as well. So shall we do that part of it?
Sure. I mean, the prospect of more devolution, which I'm sure is going to get everybody very excited, is obviously this is, it's something that's going to appeal to a lot of people, especially more sort of, I suppose, socially conservative-minded people who might feel that they want more control over their local area, especially when it comes to things like house building and that sort of thing. The problem with this is, coming hot off the heels of Rachel Reeves' speech about how we need iron discipline, and she's going to be the Iron Chancellor, a lot of metallic language. The problem is, if you're going to sort of jet start, turbocharge growth, putting things like planning permission and house building into the hands of people who are diametrically opposed to those things isn't actually a very good idea, because that's one of the things that the Tories have really struggled with the last few years. So it's real electioneering. It sounds good to a lot of people who they do need to bring over from the centre.
She said she'll simplify planning rules as well to get some of these big projects through.
I mean, when that happens, fantastic, but that is a difficult thing to get done in itself.
The Guardian have a few lines that... It always annoys me when papers have lines that are going to be delivered tomorrow, but an economy that works for the whole country is what the British people want, he will say. The Tories know that. They stood at this crossroads before. They called it levelling up. But as soon as they counted their votes, they turned their back. And that's what this is about. It's about betraying red wall voters. And they've got so many examples about how those who they made promises to about levelling up have been betrayed. And so this is clearly going to be a kind of fruitful seam to mine.
OK, and our political editor says he's got to connect with voters. That's the great ambition for tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed. We've got plenty more to say. Luckily, we've got more programme to do it in. Jenny Kleeman, Benedict Spence, thank you very much indeed. We will see you for the 11. Right now, let's check out the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, southern parts look mostly fine again tomorrow, while the north will see yet more rain. There will be quite a cloudy start there, with prolonged rain in the far north and perhaps a few spots elsewhere. The dry south will see some fairly widespread mist and fog. A strengthening wind will bring rain to the northern half of Scotland and Donegal during the morning. Northern England and the south of Ireland may see a few patchy outbreaks too, but elsewhere it'll be mainly fine once fog burns off inland. Warm again, very warm in the southeast, but the wind will make it feel a bit cooler. Rain in the north will take over Northern Ireland, the north of Ireland and the rest of Scotland during the afternoon.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, coming up next on Sky News at 11, we'll have the latest reaction as Israel continues to strike Gaza and cuts off supplies.